Be a man of bravery, be a man of bravery, this is what you are, this is what you are.
A very good evening and a warm welcome to Skills Talk. Now, this is a very special broadcast on the margins of the National Skills Week currently underway in Ongwediva in the Oshana region under the theme Youth Development Empowerment, Creating Opportunities and Bridging the Unemployment Gap. My name is Denviki Singh, your host for Skills Talk, alongside Madame Auni Ashikuti Nuyoma, our sign language interpreter for this episode. Now, as we know, Namibia aspires to be a knowledge-based and industrialized society, and thus needs to ensure a sustainable TVET sector able to respond to the dynamics of our society, the economy, and the imperatives of the fourth industrial revolution. TVET holds the key to technological progress, rapid industrialization, wealth creation, as well as poverty reduction. The question we'd like to answer this evening is, what role does TVET play as far as youth development is concerned? To help us unpack this and more, we're joined by an esteemed panel. Dr. Raimo Nanda, Deputy Executive Director in the Ministry of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation. Good evening, Doctor, and welcome to Skills Talk.
Good evening listeners, good evening viewers.
We're also delighted to be joined this evening by Mr. Ndongo. He's the manager responsible for research and planning at the Namibia Training Authority. As far as the competition for 2023 is concerned, he's the conference chairperson. Is that right, Mr. Ndongo? Good evening to you.
Yes, it is indeed. And good evening, Deva, and good evening to our viewers. And it's nice to have me here.
Now, we can't be having a conversation about youth matters without actually engaging the youth. And in that regard, we are delighted to be joined this evening by Mr. Olave Lazarus. He is a member of the Students' Representative Council at the University of Namibia, Hifikepunye Pohamba campus. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Skills Talk.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, viewers. Thank you.
Now, before we delve into this very important conversation, let's take a look at the following insert giving a snapshot of Day 1's overview. Welcome back. You're watching Skills Talk here on NBC One. That short inset gave us an overview of what transpired on day one of the National Skills Competition. As far as this evening's conversation is concerned, we're focusing primarily on youth development. Dr. Nanda, without any further ado, let's get right into it. As we know, the Ministry of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation is the custodian ministry as far as the TVET sector is concerned. And in order for this sector to not only survive, but ultimately thrive, one needs appropriate policies and regulations. From where you stand as the Deputy Executive Director in this ministry, how would you rate the success or otherwise of the policies that are in place to help steer our TVET sector in the right direction?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I must say the policy that was used to implement TVET was developed in 2005. It's about 13 years ago. So 13 years ago, new things have changed in the world. And as a result, we needed to review our TVET policy. So we have revised our TVET policy recently, and it was approved by Cabinet during 2021. Now, the revised new policy is premised on international conventions. The Shanghai 2012 International Conference that took place in China was the turning point for the reform of the entire education and training systems globally. And then came the SDGs that were also pronounced by the United Nations. We have Agenda 2063, we have the SADC Protocol, we have our national instruments. We're talking about Vision 2030, we are talking about the Harambee Prosperity Plans, and we are also talking about a study that was recently conducted by UNESCO to unpack the entire landscape in the education sector. Now, given all these developments, we needed to review our TVET policy to respond to the changing demands globally, regionally, and locally. And therefore, our TVET policy is geared towards addressing all these new requirements that we need to put in place as a country to respond to these demands and to achieve the aspirations of Vision 2030 for Namibia to become an industrialized nation.
Doctor, thank you so much for that very comprehensive overview. Notwithstanding the fact that it took us as a country from 2005 until 2021 to revise our policy, we're happy that there's a new policy in place. But despite the goals that we have set in the policy, do we have metrics available to measure whether or not this revised policy is reaping any rewards, is indeed successful?
Yes. Now, there is a requirement by government. Whenever you develop national policies, such policies must be accompanied by an implementation plan. Now, this implementation plan sets out the objectives that should be attained by the implementation of this policy. It sets out the strategies, activities to be undertaken, key indicators, baselines, time frames, as well as budgets, and ultimately the responsible person or entity to implement whatever activities are set out there. Now, of course, within the policy, we have committed ourselves that on a quarterly basis or a biannual basis, we'll have to review and track down as to whether we are on track in achieving the policy objectives. So what we need to see is whether we are on track or there are possible hindrances or risks that are actually preventing us to attain whatever objective we have set, so that we can implement corrective measures.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm sure we'll get back to that during the course of our conversation this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Ndongo, we're very happy to have you on board as well. Before we're talking about solutions to the unemployment problem relating to the youth in general, but specifically also the unemployed TVET young graduates, we need to have a look at the market that we are creating. Talk to us about the role that the NTA plays in terms of creating a conducive environment that result in opportunities for our young people and who the stakeholders are assisting the NTA in that regard.
Thank you, Deva. One of the key pillar within the policy that Dr. Nanda spoke about, it has to do with the alignment of skills development to the labor market. What that means is that we, as at the receiving end of this policy, are at immense pressure to ensure that TVET has become relevant and it's responding to the needs of the industry. Now, having said that, we are required to actually review the entire spectrum of how we were doing things and how we should be doing things moving forward. NTA is tasked to ensure skills development within the vocational space. And as a key stakeholder with other stakeholders, we are really at the focus, at the center focus to ensure that skills are available in the country, not just to respond to the emerging sectors, the green hydrogen, the oil and gas, but to ensure that we transform the entire TVET systems. And it has been quite a journey for us, and of course, being here in Ongwediva, it's one of those initiatives to see and ensure that we harness the skills and the potentials of these young people and see where we can align to the needs of our industry. And I can say that it has been an exciting journey for us, of course, with a lot of challenges that are on our path, but together with the Ministry of Higher Education, we are really trying to reach this milestone as indicated by the...
Thank you, sir. What I am hearing you say is that it can no longer be business as usual. You said you need to review the manner that you have been doing things. What brought about this review of the business that you have been conducting, number one? And also having heard you say that you are at the receiving end of the policy that Dr. Nanda and the ministry are responsible for. What do you make of the fact that it took us from 2005 until 2021 to come up with a revised TVET policy?
Thank you. First of all, we need to understand that Namibia as a country, we are faced with a lot of challenges, particularly the unemployment among the youth in general population. It's very high. We have issues of the economy that has not been growing at the rate that we wish it would be. And of course, partly we are to be blamed because one of our mandates is to ensure that our graduates do not just become employment seekers, but they become employment creators. And if the environment is not favorable enough, and if we do not equip them with the relevant skills, then they would not necessarily be able to create employment or start businesses that
are you
needed.
admitting that the NTA failed in its duty in that regard? Is that a concession?
I think as a country we have to agree at a certain point to say it, what we have been doing, we have not been doing things correctly. And I think it's during these platforms that we really want to introspective and really open up and really look at the system. Where are we failing? What is that we are not doing right? Right now, as we speak, there is a huge movement in terms of revising of all the curriculums within the TVET sectors to ensure that they are aligned to the industry. But also partly, we have intensified the process of bringing industry on board to ensure that they are part and parcels of the training intervention, because traditionally training institutions were training in isolation, and this has created a huge gap in terms of unemployed among the graduates.
Thank you.
So what we're trying to do is that we're bringing industry back to ensure that they set the standards. They tell us what we must train in. And whatever products then comes out of our institutions, they are certified by the industry. Then we will not have issues of unemployment among the youth because the standards are set by the industry.
Thank you. Although we know that the problem is a lot more complex and layered than that. Mr. Lazarus, we're very happy to have you on board. There is a perception, and we would like to hear your take on that perception, that young people are not interested in the TVET sector. Young people only want to sit at a desk and perform desktop functions. They have no business with the TVET sector. What do you make of that perspective?
Thank you very much. There are a few reasons as to why young people are dismissive of technical and vocational education.
Before you proceed with the reasons, are you thus agreeing with that perception?
Yes, I'm
Very
agreeing
well.
the perception.
Very well, thank you.
I'm going to highlight a few, though there are a lot. Lack of awareness is one of those. The youth are not aware of the benefits the vocational education offers. They do not know that after or when you complete at vocational education institutions about the high-paying jobs, they are not aware. There is a lack of awareness when it comes to TVET. Secondly, we have a negative stereotype. Young or youth have been made to understand that vocational education is for unsuccessful students, unfortunately. That's why they are very hesitant, they are dismissive to take up the course or to persuade in training, vocational trainings. And also to add on that, we have the youth, we have lack of, now we have curriculums going under reviews now, and now we have curriculum mismatch. The students that are being trained at vocational institutions, there's a curriculum mismatch which the jobs or maybe the job market does not require, and it's one of the challenges why the youth are dismissive of technical and vocational education. Just to highlight a few.
Mention one example where a TVET institution produces a skill that we don't need at the moment, as far as this curriculum mismatch is concerned, that you've just made reference to.
One of the typical example I can mention is that students that are being trained at vocational institutions, they are said to be very good in practicals, but job market sometimes require skills and also just content. And it's a skills mismatch because vocational students are never told about content. They just do practicals. And that becomes a problem when it comes to job market.
The first reason that you flagged relates to a lack of awareness about the sector. Who do you believe is responsible to create awareness around the TVET sector?
First off, let's start with the institutions themselves. The institutions should advertise about their programs also.
Are they not advertising?
They are advertising, but they are not reaching out to the masses, and that could be one of the reasons. And so, just to convince students, lack of awareness now. It's a norm. I mean, it's a normal practice from when we grew up. We never personally I never wanted to study at a vocational training institution.
Why not?
I grew up with that myth that it's for unsuccessful students.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Nanda, you and the ministry have your work cut out. According to Mr. Lazarus, there's a lack of awareness about the sector in general. There's also a pervasive stereotype that TVET is only meant for those who are academically unsuccessful. And he also claims that there's a curriculum mismatch. What is your stance, Doc?
Yeah, I will agree with my colleague to a certain extent that there is a lack of awareness. But I must applaud the NTA and I must commend them over the years for the work that they are doing. The NTA is a very rigorous advocacy campaign to demystify this negative perception. One such campaign is the Love Your Passion. Now we are running in the third episode of the Love Your Passion campaign. I wouldn't be able to exactly tell you when this campaign was launched when the first episode was launched, but I must tell you and commend the NTA. The NTA has identified a number of ambassadors, successful TVET graduates who have started their businesses, who were employed, and to use this as showcases to show and demystify the importance and the negative stereotype about TVET. I must say,
let's give Mr. Ndongo just a brief moment.
No, let me conclude. Let
Yes.
me conclude on that one. The other campaign that the NTA is using. Let me not finish. Let me go back to the Love Your campaign.
Love Your Passion.
Love Your Passion. I am an ambassador of the TVET sector. I am a qualified boiler maker. I trained as a boiler maker. I qualified as a boiler maker. But today, I have a doctorate degree. Now, this actually tells you that if you have the passion, you can become what you want. The other campaign that we are using is platforms such as the Word Skills.
Absolutely. Let's just give him a brief opportunity. As far as Live Your Passion is concerned, Mr. Ndongo, it's one thing to have these campaigns running. The challenge that was also flagged by Mr. Lazarus is that the information might not reach their market or the masses. Is it a perception that you would agree with?
I think it's the perceptions are changing, Denver, and from our data that we are having, I think everything is almost changing because we have influx of young people who are pursuing and looking for opportunities within the TVET sectors. We are currently having just over 100 training institutions throughout the country that are training in TVET, but the space are not enough. At the moment, we are turning down massive applications within the training institution.
You're listening, Mr. Lazarus, to
I
these
think
campaigns and what's happening.
The perception is changing slowly, but of course, it's one thing to say, are you attracting the best, or it's just that because the changes also in basic education curriculum that have seen quite a huge number of young people being dropped in the street. So again, we need to go back and really maybe do more research to understand this, but we know that at the face value, the perceptions are changing, and we are also starting to attract some of the best and the A's from the basic education.
Thank you, Mr. Ndongo. Mr. Lazarus, don't you believe that young people also have a responsibility to familiarize themselves with the opportunities that exist? It's one thing for these institutions to make these opportunities known. It's something else if you take up the responsibility to actually familiarize yourselves with what is available.
I strongly believe that young people also have a responsibility to take up the opportunities.
And what are you doing with that responsibility? Are you taking it seriously as young people?
We are taking it seriously, but growing up on a perspectives that vocational institutions are just meant for unsuccessful students, it becomes very hard for students to pursue.
Are you saying Dr. Nanda with his doctorate degree is an unsuccessful student? He's an ambassador for vocational training, he's a trained boiler maker, and he has a PhD. He's a success story to challenge that perception that you and young people seem to have.
I think the problem we have now is that we do not have really majorities of graduates from the vocational institutions that can inspire a lot of youth to join the institutions.
I think we need to engage him extensively later, Dr. Nanda.
I can answer this one very well. Briefly, today during the conference, we had 28 graduates from TVET centers who are successful entrepreneurs, and the story that they were telling are so encouraging. And I've requested the NBC to interview at least 3 of these students to tell their story.
Absolutely.
So inspiring. We have a lot of successful TVET graduates. We've set up entrepreneurs. We can speak about people like Paratas Nepolo. I'm so passionate about this boy. He is the owner of Millennium Refrigeration. He is employing over 100 people. We have people such as...
His passion is tangible. But
Yes.
perhaps the challenge that we must put to Mr. Lazarus is he needs to tune into NBC. You and your peers need to watch NBC because
Exactly.
you're missing out on opportunities.
Exactly.
If
Exactly.
you don't tune in, you don't familiarize yourself with what is
Exactly.
available, you will continue missing out on these opportunities and allege that there's no awareness created around it. Doctor, but I want us to touch on the implementation of TVET programs. We can't have a conversation about implementation without having a look at governance. Talk to us about the link between governance and the rollout and the implementation of our TVET programs, please.
All right. Now, when we speak about governance, you see, we've tried to clear that out. The ministry is responsible for the oversight of the policy implementation. As a ministry, we should not be involved in the implementation of programs. That is something that has to be done by the NTA. Now, what we have set out in the policy is an objective to improve governance within the sector. What we have picked up in the sector is that the NTA has duplicating functions with NQA and NCHA. Now, when the NTA was established, there was no ministry responsible for policy development. That was a function that was entirely transferred to the NTA. As per their mandate, they are responsible for policy development. They are responsible for regulating institutions. They are responsible for training. So, in other words, the NTA is the referee, the player, and the linesman, for example, what we call the judge, the jury, and the prosecutor.
But if we are talking
Now-
about governance,
Yes.
is that acceptable for them to wear so many hats?
It's not acceptable, and that's why in the policy we have tried to make sure that we clarify their roles in terms of governance. So we have clarified, we have conducted a study, we are sitting with the recommendations as to how we should go about addressing those governance issues. So it's a matter of us very soon to go to cabinet and to present these recommendations to cabinet, and for us to really make sure NTA does what they're expected to do. They are not to be in the space of, for example, overseeing policy implementation. And that's where we are.
Would you like to briefly respond to that, Mr. Ndongo?
Yes, quickly.
Yeah, briefly, please.
I think for us, it's a very winning situation that the ministry has really stepped up to really clarify this mandate, because it was quite a lot on our plate, and right now it would enable us to really focus on our core mandate, which is to regulate the sector and to fund the sector. So if all these other functions are then maybe taken away from us, then it will allow us really to focus on the quality and ensure that the sector is well regulated and not over regulated, but to ensure that proper regulations are in place, and in terms of accessing to funds and accessing to place, then we are happy to do that.
Dr. Nanda, Mr. Ndongo is expressing relief that they can, in the end, focus on their core statutory mandate and not have to fulfill additional functions.
We are working in collaboration.
As it should be.
We are working together.
Yeah.
Yes.
As it should be.
Yes.
You're watching Skills Talk. We're coming to you live from Ungwidiva in the Oshana region. We'll take a brief break and we will be right back.
Namibia is home to a people as precious as the diamonds hidden far beneath her rolling sands and turbulent seas. A people of beautiful diversity, a people of unwavering courage and boundless potential. We believe in unearthing this potential for the good of all Namibians. We are the Namdia Foundation. The Namdia Foundation was established in 2019 as the corporate social responsibility vehicle of Namdia, Namibia's cutting-edge diamond sales and marketing company. As such, the foundation drives Namdia's purpose to contribute to the upliftment of all Namibians by sustainably maximizing the full value of our diamonds. Since 2016, Namdia and the Namdia Foundation have invested close to 40 million Namibian dollars in various corporate social responsibility initiatives in education, health and sports, initiatives designed to transform the very social and economic fabric of our nation. Driven by our purpose to contribute to the alleviation of social and economic ills, we have, over the years, spearheaded numerous initiatives to build and support Namibian society. In 2022, we launched the Namdia Foundation Bursary Scheme, our biggest commitment yet. Through a total investment of 2.8 million Namibian dollars in 2023, the bursary scheme will enable 14 Namibians from across the country to pursue their tertiary education in various fields of study. At the Namdia Foundation, we believe in the spirit of Ubuntu, in community, solidarity, respect, dignity.
You're watching Skills Talk. We're coming to you live from Ngodiva in the mighty Oshana region. Mr. Nogo, a very important question that needs to be asked in general terms, but perhaps we can also provide specifics relating to the NTA. If we were to have regard to the efficiency and effectiveness of publicly funded providers within the sector, how would you rate them according to those metrics?
I think it depends on quite a number of factors that are at play. I think over the past years, we have been seeing quite significant investment that us through the training levy and of course the government allocation that we were able to bring on board even private institutions in terms of funding. And of course before COVID we were really seeing an improvement in terms of the pass rate. At some institutions it was as high as 100%, meaning that students goes in the assessment and certification process and 100% of them, they are declared as qualified or competent to enter the industry. The other one thing that I think we should mention here is that our assessors and moderators are industry people, and they are not necessarily trainers who qualify them. So when you have an industry person who come in your training institution and say, I'm happy with the quality of this, they can come and work in my workshop. We were happy with that. Then COVID happened. Of course, when COVID happened, we were not ready in terms of infrastructure, for instance, e-learning, distance learning within the TVET space. And it really hit us hard. So at some institution, training comes to a completely standstill. And most of our institutions really struggle after COVID to really pick up. But what we're seeing is that I think the performance is getting there. Of course, we have few industry that are still complaining about the quality of the output of our institution. But what we do is that we invite them to really engage and say, where do you think our trainees are lacking? So that we can, when we revise the curriculum, and despite the requirement of the NQA, when you revise a curriculum, you need to go back to the industry and really get the feedback from the industry to say, yes, whoever is going to be taught through this curriculum, we will be happy to work with these particular individuals.
Let's perhaps take a closer look. You mentioned that there's increased investment in the sector through the levies, but also through government funding. Increased investment, does that necessarily translate into greater efficiency and greater effectiveness? And if we're mentioning that quite a number of institutions recorded 100% pass rate, that certainly does not automatically mean that the programs are being managed efficiently and effectively, and that ultimately unemployment among young people within the TVET sector will be reduced, because it's clear that 100% pass rate is not enough. That doesn't guarantee a job.
Deva, I do agree with you. One thing that we need to take into consideration is that training in TVET is very expensive because we have a lot of consumable. If you train somebody how to cut an onion, it's perishable. Tomorrow, when you are going to train him again how to cut different onions in a different way, that means you have to go back to the market and buy that onion. It's the same with welding. If you use a material, it's perishable. You need to go back and buy. So it has becoming very, very expensive. And of course, with global prices, that has gone up because of other external factors. So we're not saying that because of this investment, we can attribute directly to that. It could be that these increased investments are just making up for the interest rates and so on. But what we're trying to do is that we want the involvement of the industry. Because if the industry is involved and they are happy with the product, then we are also happy.
Thank you very much. It does require all hands on deck. Mr. Lazarus, to return to your initial concern about the awareness, to also touch on the stereotype that exists about the sector among young people, and perhaps also to speak to the curriculum mismatch, as you termed it. There have been calls to introduce, already at primary school level, programs around TVET, so that the awareness starts at that level, that whatever misconception exists, whatever stereotype exists, can be dealt with. What do you make of those particular calls?
Personally, I think, and I do believe that if TVET is to be introduced from primary level to secondary level, it to attract more students as they grow up. Students show their experiences, they show their aspirations as they are young. If we are to train these students or to expose them to TVET careers at a very younger age, as they grow up, they might be able to take opportunities to study and to do their careers within the vocational training institutions. We can attract these students. We can engage them in internships. Like at secondary level, we can do internships for these learners. We can do internships. We can give them hand-on activities again at a very young age. Then they will develop that interest to join the vocational training institutions, and that will be of their great importance.
Are you, as a student leader, actively lobbying for that to happen? What is it that you have done as a student leader in that regard?
As I have done as a student leader at the University of Namibia, we have developed a career fair that was usually not done at the institution. We host a career fair at the University of Namibia yearly, mid-June, July, just to give guidance, where we call in all the exhibitors to come. We call in these vocational institutions to come, so they market to the students, the ones at the secondary schools. So they market so that these students can then develop the interest to join the institutions. We also have, we provide seminars, we provide training to the students at high schools. We give them information, and that's how we get them to join.
So if you're already doing that, why does that perception persist that it's only those who do not make it who land in the sector? Are you thus implying that your efforts have not been successful?
The efforts are being successful. The efforts just came out recently. For those that have already been in the schools, it's a bit late for them to catch up. So that's why we are trying to attract the younger ones. At least when they grow up, when they are at secondary level, then they know the impacts of vocational institutions. As my colleagues here have indicated that the number is increasing. It's because we are attracting the younger ones. Those that are already in grade 12s and 11s, they've grown on that perspective that vocational institutions are for unsuccessful students. Yes.
Does that mean you're going to change your course?
No, it does not mean you are going to change
You
your
are not
course.
prepared to do it, to practice what you preach.
But we are going to promote the students to join the vocational institutions, not to convince them to change their courses, but to explain to them the impacts and the benefits that vocational institutions also offer.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And we're very happy that you tuned in on all our platforms. We're also very happy for the social media engagement, and some of you had the following to say about what is on offer. Keith Gairo says, this is what we want to see. Skill training is the way to go if we want to become an industrialized nation. Lot Jr. says, this is a splendid presentation and setup. kudos to the team. I look forward to the rest of the event over the next couple of days. We also heard from Omega, who then said, wow, all the best and good luck to everybody. Oshoto Media Productions says, congratulations to all members taking part in the Namibia World Skills Competition. I want to return to you, Mr. Lazarus. We see a boom in the country. We see great potential regarding green hydrogen, regarding the developments around oil and gas. And in order for young Namibians to thrive, they will require TVET skills in those particular sector. Do you agree with that reality, number one? Number two, how much awareness are we creating to empower young people to ultimately be able to seize the opportunities that are emerging?
I should agree the fact that for the hydrogen project, the students require TVET skills to partake. TVT, these are the vocational institutions. These vocational institutions mainly focus on practice and not on content. And this is some of this.
I need you to clarify that statement because it's the second time this evening that you're mentioning it, that the curricula in TVET focus on practical aspects and not on content.
Yes.
What is it that you mean, sir?
By that, I mean students at the vocational institutions, they normally do practices. They practice, they come up with things, they design things. But students at the institutions, the higher institutions of the likes of the University of Namibia, NAST, these students have a 80 to 20% ratio, where 80% they mainly focus on content. They master the content, they study.
Are you talking about theory when you say content?
Yes, it's theory.
And you're saying in the TVET curricula, no provision is made for theory?
They do make provisions for theory, but not 100% as
Thank
the
you.
institutions.
Ndongo, is he talking the truth?
Yes, I think what we need to understand is that for us it's a 70-30, where 70% of the time of the student is expected to be on practice, while only 30% will focus on the on the theoretical part. But before while I'm having the floor, I think it's very important to also clarify one point to say. The NTA, together with the Ministry of Higher Education, is working closely with the basic education and NEED to implement vocational subject in basic education. Denver, all these schools that you have been seeing visiting these areas, they are specifically chosen because they have vocational subjects to come and expose those young people to vocational opportunities. I just wanted to clarify that and add to a young brother what he was trying to say, that effort are being on the way. Of course, there are a lot of challenges because these schools, they are not equipped to provide fully vocationals. Also in terms of trainers, the teachers, they themselves need to be upskilled to be able to transfer that knowledge.
The trainers need to be trained as well.
Yes.
Dr. Nanda, thank you, Mr. Ndongo. We're slowly running out of time, Dr. Nanda, but
I just want to amplify on this issue. It's a very, very important topic. What we are currently lacking in the system is articulation. TVET is seen to be a dead end. You cannot further your education to tertiary education. What we are doing in the current context of the new policy is to revise the curriculum, like what Mr. Ndongo has said, to really strengthen the content of the curricula. Once you've completed your studies at the TVET center, you can easily articulate to NAST or UNAM and to further your education. So the content aspect is something that we are earnestly addressing with the revision of the TVET curricula.
Gentlemen, we've unfortunately run out of time. Mr. Lazarus, from where you stand, particularly being a student leader at the Fikipunye Pahamba campus of the University of Namibia, what do you believe is the way forward? What are the solutions that we need to come up with through a platform such as the National Skills Competition in order to ensure that the awareness creation exists, the stereotype gets eradicated, and that we make sure that there's no curriculum mismatch, according to you?
I strongly believe that if we build from the foundation, if we start from the primary schools, if we are to implement the TVET programs at a primary level, where where learners are still young, then we can be able to attract a lot. And you also, if schools can have platforms like expos where they can have these career expos where they call in vocational institutions, they call in higher institutions, the UNAMs, the NAS institutions.
Schools are not doing that
The schools are not doing that.
across the country.
I can't attest to that.
Are you ready to face the fire of these allegations, sir?
No, I'm not ready to face, but 90%, or let me say the majority of the schools are not doing that currently. It's the only
That remains
institutions.
to be tested. Another solution that you'd like to propose?
Another solution that I would want to propose is for institutions themselves and vocational, high institutions and vocational institutions themselves, just promote themselves through these platforms. They host platforms for Career Expo and other things where they can explain the impacts and benefits that learners or students can get from this, just to ease this or to completely get away with the stereotype, this negative stereotype of saying vocational institutions are just for unsuccessful students.
Thank you, Nene.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Ndongo, you're also the chairperson of the conference that is a critically important component of the National Skills Competition. Can you briefly touch on its role as it is geared towards youth employment ultimately, and certainly for us to leave these premises with a clear action plan on how we can eradicate youth unemployment within the TVET sector? Very briefly, please.
Thank you. I would have failed in my duty as the chairperson of the conference committee if I didn't speak to that. Denver, how the competition is run is that we run it parallel with the conference, and we have our conference open today, where we have really very interesting discussions and presentations. And this conference is focusing on the youth, and it's focusing on local content. And we have designed it in that way because we believe that the challenges that are facing our youth, the solutions are with us. And hence we have made it a deliberate effort that it is going to be a focus of the Namibian youth. It's going to be industry players that would come and really sit with the youth and really try to find the solutions. As the doctor has indicated, we have youth from all the regions that are representing their regions. They are here, and we have industry players such as Yonamco representing the oil and gas. We have stakeholders that would talk about the green hydrogen and all other exciting emerging sectors, your blue economy, for instance, and agri-tech, for instance. And what we're trying to do is really to push the youth to become more entrepreneurial. And what is exciting about it is also we have the funding facilities. We have your agri bank, you have your development bank, you have your bank. So they are going to unpack what are those facilities that are available for young people to actually be able to pursue them. Thank you so much, David.
Dr. Nanda, you have the final word this evening. Can you also just briefly touch on the importance of the National Skills Competition 2023 to help us deal with the challenges that give rise to youth unemployment within the TVET sector, so that ultimately also we get armed with a plan on the way forward?
Yeah. Denver, I wouldn't want to respond to that question because my colleague has already amplified, but there are two issues that I want to share with the public.
From the perspective of the policymaker?
Yes.
Yeah.
In terms of what we are doing to support youth employment, recently, Cabinet has approved a tax incentive to incentivize employers who are going to participate in youth employment programs. As we are talking, we are working on a national work integrated learning framework. My colleague Paulos talked about skills mismatch. And this Olavi spoke about skills mismatch. So we are at the verge of completing this national integrated the national work integrated learning policy. Now this policy speaks about internships, job attachment, apprenticeships, all kind of programs that students would require to get an opportunity to practice what they have learned at an institution.
Thank you, Doctor.
Now with this, we want to incentivize employers. So very soon we'll be going public to inform the nation where we are in terms of this policy framework. I thank you.
Thank you, Nene, Doctor. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise this evening. Let's continue the good fight.
Thank you.
And that concludes this episode of Skills Talk. We'll be back most probably tomorrow evening, this time, same place.
Be a man of bravery. Kaukweka seke kwaha. Be a man of bravery. Kaukweka seke kwaha. This is what you are. Kaukweka sahoka. This is what you are. Kaukweka sahoka. Be a man of bravery. Kaukweka seke kwaha. Be a man of bravery. Kaukweka seke kwaha. This is what you are. Kaukweka sahoka. This is what you are. Kaukweka sahoka.